Hi everyone and welcome to the new video. For this video I have prepared two main topics, which is using AI generated images as references and using projector for painting. But before we get into that, I want to address two questions I got on Instagram. The first one was about whether I use productivity apps, given that I always have a million things going on. So my answer is no, I don't. I used to use the app Forest when I was studying because it basically just tracks time following something like the Pomodoro technique. It helped me back then, but now my only app is my own brain, which doesn't let me rest unless I'm working, which is definitely not a healthy system. Honestly, the reason I do so much is that I don't know how to rest, and that's really not a good thing. I actually think it's some kind of self-destruction, overworking myself to the point where it affects my health. I wish I could give you advice on how to balance work and rest, but I just can't seem to let myself take breaks. If I don't work, I get overwhelmed with guilt, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I really believe it's important to maintain a healthy balance between work and relaxation. So I'm sorry that I couldn't really answer your question. And the second question was about how I was doing in school. Since it is only my third week, I don't have a ton of updates, but as you will see in the video, I was newly assigned to the drawing studio because in my second year I have to pick two studios or two ateliers, and I really didn't like this one at all, the drawing studio. Not like a lot, it got better, but when I was filming this video I didn't really like it because the teachers here had completely different approach compared to the painting studio, which is the second studio I have to attend, where they let us do whatever we wanted without interfering with our process. But in the drawing studio are more strict. We had to follow like starting with the background first, and I wasn't used to that since I didn't go to an art high school. I never had that structured training in techniques. To be clear, I'm not saying that their approach is bad, it was just unfamiliar to me. The painting studio teachers were way more flexible, while the drawing teachers had very specific rules you should follow, and that made it tough for me in the beginning because I wasn't used to it. Maybe it was also because our first assignment was a still life, which I don't enjoy at all, even when it's painting, so we will see how it will go. Also, one of my big relief was that I finally got my individual study plan approved. I had been super worried that they wouldn't approve it, even though there was no real reason for them to reject it, so now I only had to go to school 2 days a week, and the rest of the time I could work from home, so this was a huge weight off my shoulders. And lastly, also my carpal tunnel had been acting up badly the day I had the drawing studio class, which I absolutely hated, as I said. And during the class I completely wrecked my hand. Painting isn't that bad for the carpal tunnel, but holding a pencil for detailed drawing was brutal, and my hand kept tingling, and I even got some like electric shock like sensation, so it was awful. Anyway, I just wanted to vent a bit, so sorry about that. And now finally the topic of today's video is the AI and the projector. A few months back, I asked people on Twitter on today's video topic, which is, as I said, using AI as a reference and using projector. So I want to share some of their opinions here, but before that I think it makes sense to go over some history regarding the use of projectors. And one of the earliest predecessors
What? Predecessors. Jak se to dá říct jinak předchůdce? Predecessors.
predecessors of projectors was the camera obscura. Artists like Vermeer allegedly used this tool as early as the 16th and 17th centuries. And to explain briefly how the camera obscura worked, light passed through a small hole into a darkened room where an image from the outside world was projected onto the opposite wall, and it functioned very similarly to a modern projector. Artists could adjust it not only to project outdoor scenes, but also still lifes or even portraits of people inside the room. Now, onto my personal opinion. I strongly believe that artists should only project their own sketches and not just random images they find online. Not too long ago, I worked on the massive 3-meter wide canvas featuring 6 figures, which you will see in this video, I think. And I had already spent hours just on the initial sketch, so transferring it onto such a huge canvas would have been ridiculously time-consuming, and that's why I decided to use a projector for the first time. And let me tell you, it was a game changer. The process was so much faster. I didn't have to spend countless hours manually transferring every line for a grid, because on this big of a painting I would definitely use a grid method if I would do it traditionally without the help of projector. It probably would have taken me dozens of hours just for that step alone, but here is the thing. I had already drawn everything myself. I know I could do it without the help of the projector if I wanted, and that's what I think is very crucial. To be able to make sketches on canvas without using a projector and using it mainly just to save up some time. Historically, whenever artists had access to new technologies that made their work easier, they embraced them. And I see no reason why today should be any different. What's important is that an artist already possesses the fundamental skills to draw and paint without relying entirely on tools like projectors. And as I said, as long as these tools are used to speed up the process rather than replace skill, I don't see an issue with that. As for what others think on the Twitter, most people I talked to agreed that using projectors isn't a problem. One common opinion was that as long as an artist is projecting their own design, there is no reason to avoid using the tool. Another valid point was that if someone projects a design they didn't create and fails to disclose that, it's unfair to artists who put in the effort to create their own work. And honestly, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you use a projector but pretend you designed the reference yourself, that's straight up dishonest. Beyond the camera obscura, there have been many other technologies over the centuries that helped artists. For example, camera lucida was an optical device that allowed artists to view an object and their canvas at the same time. Scientists like John Herschel and many 19th century painters used it. And then there was the pantograph, which allowed artists to scale drawings up or down. This tool was used in the 17th and 18th centuries by figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Albrecht Dürer. And fast forward to modern times, and we now have tools like Photoshop, Procreate, and even AI, which I will get into in a bit. Photoshop, for instance, is commonly used by illustrators who first sketch on paper, then refine their work digitally. Even photography, when it first emerged, was feared by some artists as a potential replacement for painting, but as we know now, that never happened. So instead, artists started using photos as references, integrating them into their workflow. And this is where I see a distant similarity to AI. Many people fear AI will replace traditional painting altogether. Personally, I have come to terms with the fact that AI might take away some of my clients, people who would rather generate an AI image than commission a hand-painted piece, but honestly, would we even want those people as clients, or if they don't truly appreciate art, they probably wouldn't have commissioned a painting in the first place. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think AI will have such a drastic impact, but of course I could be wrong. but we will see, I guess. One of the many issues with AI I have is that people who generate them often call themselves artists. They take an AI-generated picture and label it as art, which is something I strongly disagree with. Here is a great example for my point I saw in other YouTube video. Imagine you tell a friend who is an artist that you have an idea for a painting, but don't know how to paint. So they create it for you. For example, the commission, as I said. Would you call yourself an artist just because you had the idea? Probably not. I think that's a really great example. Another major problem, and I would say the biggest one is, for me, is that AI is trained on real artwork from actual painters. This raises serious ethical concerns, but maybe this will be the biggest controversial point I have. Even when people use photos as references, they often don't get permission from the original photographers. So in some ways, both AI and photography raises similar ethical dilemmas. That being said, I don't think AI references are necessarily a problem as long as an artist doesn't blindly copy an AI-generated image. If you use it for inspiration or to refine certain details, it's not much different from using a photo reference. The key is to add your own creativity and interpretation rather than just reproducing what's generated. For me, the most beautiful thing about art is that I get to create something entirely my own, and the problem arises when technology makes people too dependent on it, leading them to simply replicate what the tool provides rather than injecting their unique touch. I know this is a controversial topic amongst artists. Personally, I use AI a lot, but not for image generation. I mainly use text-based AI models like ChatGPT to make my workflow easier. I even had a discussion on Twitter recently about using AI to generate my business terms and conditions, and some people argued that it was unethical of me to rely on AI instead of hiring someone to write them for me. But to be honest, I disagree with that, because if you are just starting a small business like I am, you simply don't have the budget to pay for every single service. If I followed that logic, I would have to outsource every second thing I do, and that's just not realistic for an emerging artist. At the end of the day, I've accepted that AI has probably already taken some of my potential clients, but I honestly don't care too much. But it may be different because I'm a traditional artist. Also, I have a deep love for technological advancement. I listen to a ton of podcasts about AI and I find the entire topic fascinating. But there is a big difference between using AI as a tool and relying on it completely to create something that you then pass off as your own. I hope this didn't upset too many people. I really try to look at it objectively and think it through. AI is controversial and complex topics. In many ways, it's ethically questionable. Personally, I have come to terms with AI quite a lot and try to find the positives in it because, realistically, it's probably here to stay, and since it's already here, I might as well use it to make my work easier. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely leave a comment on what's your view on these topics, especially if you disagree with me. We can start a discussion in the comments and I would love to hear your perspective. So I will see you in the next video and have a nice day. Bye!